Both Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock can be hilarious when they've got the right material. They've teamed up for The Lost City, which is hitting theaters now. So should you grab your pack and go on the adventure? Before I get into my review, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, BBC Select. As you know, I am a huge fan of documentaries, and BBC Select is a great resource because it's a BBC streaming service featuring hundreds of critically acclaimed documentaries. From politics and culture to history and travel, you'll find so many different documentaries to watch on BBC Select. Something I found really awesome is that not only can you watch documentaries on different topics, but BBC Select has also curated their docs into collections. So are you a fan of war documentaries? Well, there's an entire collection dedicated to that. Maybe you're enthralled by the royals, or you just want lighter-hearted content surrounding food, which I'm obviously a fan of. There are collections for those as well. And then there's a whole helping of individual documentaries on art, music, and my favorite topic, true crime. I recently watched A Very British Murder with Lucy Worsley on BBC Select because it combines two of my massive interests, the UK and true crime. The 3 episodes work to answer why we are so fascinated by grisly, gruesome murders. And I say we because, come on, you know you are just as intrigued by true crime as I am. And getting access to BBC Select is easy. BBC Select is available on Amazon Prime Video channels, the Apple TV app, and the Roku channel. Subscriptions are only $4.99 a month, and if you want to just give it a test spin before fully committing, you can sign up now for a free 7-day trial. For all the info and to gain access to documentaries from a balanced point of view, visit bbcselect.com. And for easier clicking to bbcselect.com, I've also linked it in the description below. Thanks again to BBC Select for sponsoring this video. Now let's dive into The Lost City. A reclusive romance novelist on a book tour with her cover model gets swept up in a kidnapping attempt that lands them both in a cutthroat jungle adventure. This reminded me somewhat of that mid-80s action adventure Romancing the Stone with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. Now there are several similarities between the two, but The Lost City is also different in enough ways to make it its own story. We have Sandra Bullock, who is a romance writer, and Channing Tatum is the guy that is featured on the cover of all of her novels. Our antagonist is Daniel Radcliffe, playing an uber-rich guy who is in search of some undiscovered valuables. Now, Bullock is wonderful, showing how she is so versatile and can handle just about any genre. She is sarcastically funny, but can also play along with the action. And I love that while she seems fragile at times, she can be strong and sympathetic simultaneously. And this isn't news, but it's so awesome that Tatum isn't afraid to look silly so that he can play his part with abandon. He becomes very endearing in some of his vulnerability, making him come across as an everyman, albeit a very handsome and muscular one. And his comedic timing is awesome as well. His delivery makes him extremely funny, but then when he and Bullock are bouncing off of each other, they're both hilarious. Daniel Radcliffe plays a great baddie, and he's extra effective when he's delivering his lines and all the while not blinking like some deranged psychopath. Now, he is a little cartoonish at points, but it mostly works for what his character is within the story. Now, he's rich and spoiled, and his mannerisms expertly convey that. Now, Brad Pitt doesn't have a large role, but he does steal the scenes that he's in. He's quiet, smoldering, and really just a great addition to the cast because he also isn't afraid to just go for it in his performance. Davine Joy Randolph plays Bullock's friend and her agent, and she also has some really good comedic timing and then delivery. But what I liked best is how convincing she was at being exasperated. She shows this in some small ways throughout the film, sometimes with just her eyes and maybe a shrug or a sigh, but then she also gets to deliver a small monologue, and she is just spectacular in that. The action and the adventure angles do work too. The search for the valuables is fun, and then the lost or hidden ruins angle really drew me in. Now, I do wish it had taken even more of a prominent role in the story, maybe to build out more mystery and intrigue as the characters search for the lost city. What we get is decent and it's pretty effective, but I just found myself wanting even more. I mean, the movie creates a good amount of action to make this exciting and fast-paced, so it is captivating for just about the entire time. Our characters also find themselves in the middle of several sets of difficulties, which makes for a fun watch. Now, some of the humor in this is dry, but there are also many points that I laughed out loud, and sometimes I laughed harder than I have in quite a while during the movie. The deliveries of all the players are timed really well, and then they're effective in their tone. As some jokes do fall flat, and there were moments that felt more forced, but for the majority, the comedy did exactly what it was supposed to do. This also has a really good underlying romance to it. Even though Bullock is the romance writer, she's not as warm and cuddly as Tatum actually is. And I like that there are looks and glances between the two. It's sometimes flirty, other times very awkward, but they help to create the sense of love or maybe even attraction between the characters, even if they're in dire situations. And because they don't overplay the romance angle, it doesn't feel forced, but instead feels very natural in how it all comes about. The jungle setting is beautiful, and I really enjoyed all of the aerial shots just to show how deep and treacherous the jungle actually is. The location also provides a setup for a really funny but gross scene between Bullock and Tatum. The movie is just under 2 hours, and while most of it flowed well, some of the pacing is uneven. Now, there's a point as we get towards the third act that the momentum has a lull in it, and I just felt it. I mean, it's not that I was bored, there was just a shift in how things were progressing, and it just seemed like the story kind of stepped on the brakes for a bit and then decided to hit the gas again. I'd like even more of the lore of The Lost City. We get some, which helps to build the adventure aspect, but the film touches on points that were very interesting, but then never really revisits them. I mean, think about an Indiana Jones movie. The story is able to focus on the action and whatever trouble Jones is in, but the details on what he's searching for never get lost either. I'm just saying that I was engaged in the narrative in this and just wanted even more of it built in. Especially as we become more focused on the search for the Lost City, it's very intriguing and it grabbed my attention. Now, some of the graphics do look like they're fake, but it's not a huge deal. I mean, it's just a little noticeable. And there are some stunts in this that are also a little cartoonish and kind of oddly placed, especially when a few characters on motorcycles are introduced. They appear on screen like they're some huge actors that are just getting this grand introduction, but we never see their faces, so it all felt just a bit odd. I think you're going to find the story and the arcs pretty predictable, but it surprisingly didn't bother me. I mean, while there is a mystery aspect to the story, it's not one that we're just trying to figure out like a whodunit. The mystery comes from the search and what will the discovery be. So even though there is obviousness to the plot trajectory, it was comforting to know that our characters will probably do A, then travel to B, then get mixed up with C, followed by the complication of D before finding a resolution. I mean, the story isn't clever in that way, but because I'm engaged with the characters and then having so much fun watching the whole thing play out, I'm not concerned with the easy-to-follow pattern of ideas. So overall, The Lost City is wonderful escapism into an action-adventure world with performances that made me care about the characters and then laugh out loud at all of their antics. The action sequences are exciting, keeping the movie progressing well for the majority of the time. There was a lull towards the latter portion of the story, but it then picked up again and finished strong. The actors all deliver their lines with great comedic timing, keeping the narrative engaging even when much of the story is predictable. While I'd love to have even more lore introduced regarding the Lost City that our characters are searching for, the story does feel complete with a setting that is very immersive. Now, while I'm not sure I'd watch this on repeat constantly, it certainly is worth checking out in the theaters and then again when it hits a digital platform. I mean, it provided a great watching experience and it caused a ton of laughs, which was very welcome. There's no sex, some nudity, some profanity, and a lot of violence. I give The Lost City 4 out of 5 couches. What's an action-adventure movie that you really enjoy? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to check out BBC Select. I've linked it in the description below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.